It was deeply, deeply troubling, hurtful and painful to open up the Australian Jewish News this morning, yet again for 2 weeks in a row, and to read of the shocking allegations of anti-Semitism occurring in a neighbouring suburb right near us here in Brighton, where you can read of such terrible things that school children are doing to one another. The bullying, the vile comments, the hurtfulness, and the deep trauma that some of these Jewish children are experiencing. It was so difficult to read through the report. And in particular, we live here in a society in Melbourne which prides itself on being a beacon of multiculturalism, of respect, of harmony, of togetherness. And so for this to be occurring right here in our society is depressing, it's painful. And this comes after weeks of us seeing and being exposed to hearing of racist things that are occurring in our society. And yet now again, this is happening in a local school. And one has to wonder, because we know that children are not born to hate somebody because of their skin color, because of their belief in a particular religion. This is slowly fed to them through their parents, through their education, through their environment, their surroundings. And so you have to start to think, what are these children hearing at home? What are they hearing in their social circles that can bring them to hate another person because they're Jewish? I was thinking about perhaps if you met some of these parents, it might not be so outwardly that you could see that they are anti-Semites or that they hate somebody else because of their religion. But there's a very, very crucial thing that is occurring, which I think we can glean from our Parsha this week, Parsha of Matot and Masei, the double portion. The Torah tells us as the Jewish people were about to enter into the land of Israel, it says that 2.5 tribes, Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh, told Moses they wanted a bit of the portion of land outside of Israel because they had a lot of livestock. They had all this cattle that they needed to feed, and there was beautiful landscape of lush pastures for their flock. And so they said to Moses, we want to build places for our livestock and for our children. Moshe gets very upset with them. Moses gets very upset, and he says, hold on a minute. Just listen to what you said. You put your material possessions before your children. And this was very subtle. I don't think, Reuven and Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh didn't care about their children. But that subtle comment raised flags by Moshe. And Moshe said, if this is how you're thinking, there's a big problem. Even just by the mentioning of your materialism before the importance of your children can lead to, unfortunately, people growing up thinking that the material world is better, or the possessions in our life are more important than the relationships, the people. And so I think this is a very, very clear message which we are being told over here. That yes, they might not be outwardly saying anti-Semitic things, but it could be very nuanced things or slight things talking about Jews and money. And yes, this might not seem like the biggest travesty in the scheme of the comments that could be said, but if you slowly allow things to occur, if you slowly allow things to go unchecked, and even though it's a very mild thing, this is what children hear. Okay, so we can say that the Jews are all about money. Okay, so what if I hear another comment about somebody being Jewish? It's okay, I've heard this is allowed in my home, this is allowed in my society. And so we have to be very, very careful that the root of all this happening can occur from very subtle things being said. The same thing occurs, as I said, with racism, with sexism, where somebody says a comment about women and it's allowed to go unchecked. That can eventually lead to somebody, God forbid, thinking that they can hit another person, they can hit a woman. And so this has to be taken care of very, very, very carefully, delicately, and quickly. And I think, the fact that the Jewish News has highlighted this and brought it to the forefront is fantastic. I think that politicians speaking about it and people calling out what's wrong is so crucial, because as I said, if we allow even a slight comment which is racist or anti-Semitic underlying and underpinnings, and whilst you might not think it's serious, look what it can lead to. It can lead to children bullying and beating up another child because they might have heard at home that this is acceptable, this is okay. And so hopefully we'll take Moshe's message, where he corrected Reuven and Gad, said, hold on guys, the way you say things, your priorities need to be checked, because it can lead to eventually people thinking in a very warped way. And this here too as well. If you hear things of anti-Semitism, if you hear things of racism or sexism, call it out, say it's wrong, because if you don't, God forbid, we can lead to some really, really terrible outcomes. And please God, we'll continue to be able to live in a society which is harmonious, where people respect and care for one another. And hopefully this will be the way that each of us conducts ourselves, teaches our children, expresses our messages, and hopefully live in a much better and more tolerant and more harmonious society than we live in today. Shabbat Shalom and a wonderful weekend ahead.